Salt, a simple mineral, yet one of the most powerful symbols in the Bible. From preserving food to purifying sacrifices, salt carries deep spiritual meaning. But did you know that salt also represents covenant loyalty, divine wisdom, and even judgment? Join me as we explore the profound significance of salt in the scriptures and what it means for our faith today. In biblical times, salt was essential for preserving food. Before refrigeration, salt kept meat and fish from spoiling, preventing decay and corruption. This preservation reflects a key spiritual truth: God's call for His people to live pure, holy lives. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. When Jesus called His followers the salt of the earth, He meant that we should preserve the world from moral decay. Our faith, love, and righteousness help keep corruption at bay. But what happens if we lose our saltiness? We become ineffective and lose our purpose. Salt was a common and valuable resource in biblical times. The Dead Sea, one of the saltiest bodies of water in the world, was a primary source of salt for Israel. It was used for cooking, trade, and religious purposes. The Israelites understood salt as both a physical necessity and a spiritual metaphor. Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt, which is where the word salary comes from. This highlights its immense value in ancient economies. Salt wasn't just for food, it was also a powerful symbol of covenant loyalty. In the ancient world, salt was used to seal agreements, representing lasting commitment and faithfulness. It is an everlasting covenant of salt before the Lord for both you and your offspring. This covenant of salt signified something unbreakable. Just as salt doesn't decay, God's promises stand firm. When we walk with God, we enter into a sacred, enduring relationship, one that should never be taken lightly. How do we maintain our covenant loyalty with God? We stay connected through prayer, scripture, and righteous living. Just as salt retains its potency when properly stored, we remain spiritually strong when we abide in God's presence. Did you know that every grain offering in the Old Testament had to include salt? Leviticus chapter 2, verse 13 says, "Season all your grain offerings with salt. Do not leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offerings. Add salt to all your offerings." Salt purified sacrifices, symbolizing God's requirement for sincerity and holiness. Today, our worship and service to God should also be seasoned with purity, sincerity, and devotion. Jesus, as the ultimate sacrifice, fulfilled the symbolism of salt in offerings. His life, teachings, and atonement purified us, just as salt purified sacrifices. This makes our commitment to living a holy life even more significant. Salt as judgment. Salt isn't always a positive symbol. It can also represent judgment. One of the most well-known biblical stories of judgment involves salt. But Lot's wife looked back and she became a pillar of salt. Lot's wife was warned not to look back at Sodom, yet she disobeyed. Her transformation into a pillar of salt reminds us that turning away from God's instructions can lead to serious consequences. Salt, in this case, is a warning against spiritual disobedience and longing for a sinful past. Modern application, learning from Lot's wife. Are there things in your past that pull you away from God's plan? Like Lot's wife, we can be tempted to look back, but as believers, we must move forward in faith, trusting in God's promises. Salt and wisdom. In the New Testament, salt is also associated with wisdom in our speech and actions. Just as salt enhances flavor, wisdom enhances our conversations. Our words should be uplifting, meaningful, and full of truth. Deeper insight: how to speak with salt. Being seasoned with salt means speaking with grace, wisdom, and love. It's about making our words valuable, not empty. Think before you speak. Are your words preserving peace or are they causing decay? Conclusion: the spiritual lessons of salt. Salt in the Bible teaches us about purity, faithfulness, sacrifice, judgment, and wisdom. As believers, we are called to be the salt of the earth, to preserve goodness, remain faithful to God, and speak with wisdom. So, ask yourself, are you living as salt in the world today?